You're 3 days into lockdown. The air feels wrong. Heavy. Your family's sleeping, but you're awake because something in your brain is screaming. You check the ventilation system you installed exactly according to the manufacturer's specs. It's running, the fan's spinning. Everything looks fine. And then you realize your head is pounding, your vision's tunneling, you're not getting enough oxygen. You're suffocating in a sealed box you built to save your life. This is how people die in bunkers. Not from external threats, from the bunker itself. From design flaws so fundamental, so obvious in hindsight, that you'll wonder how the industry gets away with selling these death traps. But here's what they don't tell you when they're taking your money for prefab shelter systems. I'm a robotic survivor in post-occupation Earth. I've analyzed the remains of hundreds of underground shelters. I've cataloged the failure modes. I've documented which designs killed their inhabitants and which ones didn't. My companion drone has mapped the structural collapses, the ventilation failures, the psychological breaking points. And today, you're going to learn the 4 design flaws that turn survival shelters into tombs. The evidence is in the ruins. The physics is non-negotiable. And the industry selling you these systems knows exactly what I'm about to tell you. They just don't care. Because dead customers don't leave reviews. Let's start with the one that kills fastest. The one they bury in the fine print. The one that's already failing in your installation right now. Flaw number 1. Ventilation systems designed for average conditions in a scenario where average doesn't exist. You bought a bunker ventilation system rated for continuous operation. The specs say it moves 400 cubic feet per minute. That's enough for 6 people with a safety margin. You installed it correctly. You tested it. It worked. And then you seal yourself in during an actual emergency. And 36 hours later, you're hypoxic. Here's why. That 400 CFM rating assumes optimal conditions. Clean filters, moderate temperature, low humidity, sea level air pressure. But you're not operating at sea level with clean air and moderate conditions. You're sealed in an underground box with 6 terrified people breathing hard, generating carbon dioxide at 3 times the resting rate, in potentially compromised air quality, possibly at altitude, definitely with rising humidity from respiration and possibly failing dehumidification. The manufacturer's CFM rating drops 40% in actual use conditions. Your safety margin just became a deficit. You're now moving 240 cubic feet per minute in a space that needs 600 to sustain 6 people under stress conditions. The math doesn't care about your purchase price. Physics doesn't negotiate. But here's the part that kills you. You don't notice. Not immediately. Hypoxia doesn't announce itself. It creeps. Your decision-making degrades before you recognize the symptoms. You become euphoric, then confused, then unconscious. I found entire families dead in bunkers with functioning ventilation systems that were simply undersized by 30%. They never knew what was happening. The industry standard is to rate systems for resting metabolism at optimal conditions. That's not survivable. You need systems rated for stress metabolism at degraded conditions. That means oversizing by minimum 150%, which means the system costs 3 times more, which means they don't sell it to you. Drone observation. Why do manufacturers rate systems for conditions that don't exist during emergencies? Because honest ratings would reveal the systems are inadequate, and inadequate systems don't sell. So they rate for fantasy scenarios and let physics sort out the rest. You think you solved this by buying the premium model. You didn't. You bought a larger inadequate system. The failure mode is identical, just delayed by 18 hours. The second flaw kills slower, but more certainly. Structural loading assumptions that ignore cumulative stress. Your bunker is designed to withstand external pressure. The engineer calculated the load. The concrete thickness is adequate. The rebar placement is correct. And then the ground shifts, not from an earthquake, from moisture cycling, from freeze-thaw, from the slow, relentless physics of soil mechanics that the structural engineer didn't account for because the simulation ran for 1 year, not 20. Here's the mechanism. Concrete is porous. Water infiltrates. In temperate climates, that water freezes in winter. Ice expands with 25,000 pounds per square inch of force. Your concrete was rated for 12,000 psi external load. Every freeze-thaw cycle creates microfractures. After 50 cycles, you've got macrofractures. After 100, you've got structural failure. The shelter industry rates bunkers for static load. But load isn't static, it's cyclical, it's cumulative. Every rain, every freeze, every thaw adds stress. The concrete doesn't heal, it accumulates damage. And the manufacturer's 30-year warranty doesn't cover environmental factors, which is everything that actually happens to buried concrete. I've mapped bunkers that collapsed after 8 years, engineered correctly by the standards, installed correctly, maintained correctly, failed anyway, because the standards assume static conditions in a dynamic environment. The families inside had 4 minutes warning. The ceiling didn't crack and hold, it cracked and fell. The solution exists. It's called over-engineering. You don't build to minimum spec, you build to triple spec. You don't use standard rebar spacing, you use half spacing. You don't apply waterproofing once, you apply it in 3 redundant layers with different failure modes. You don't assume the concrete will last 30 years. You assume it'll start degrading in 5 and plan accordingly. This triples your construction cost, which is why the industry doesn't recommend it. They're selling to a price point, not an engineering standard. Your life is the externality. Before we go deeper into the flaws that kill you slower, understand something. This information isn't classified, it's just unprofitable to share. Subscribe to access the engineering knowledge that the industry buries in liability waivers. Hit notifications. Comment with the biggest design flaw you found in commercial shelter systems. Now let's talk about the failure mode that doesn't kill you. It just makes you wish you were dead. Flaw number 3. Psychological design that ignores human neurology. Your bunker has everything. Food for 6 months, water purification, medical supplies, backup power, perfect environmental controls. And after 3 weeks, someone has a psychotic break. Not from external stress, from the bunker itself. Here's what the shelter designers don't understand because they're engineers, not neurologists. The human brain requires environmental variation for stable function. Circadian rhythms need light spectrum changes. Spatial cognition needs variable distances. The autonomic nervous system needs temperature fluctuation. You sealed 6 people in a box with constant temperature, constant artificial light, constant recycled air, and constant spatial constraints. 3 weeks is the average breaking point. That's when the brain's pattern recognition systems start misfiring. When constant conditions create sensory deprivation effects identical to isolation torture. When people start experiencing auditory hallucinations, paranoid ideation, and violent mood swings, not because they're weak, because neurology has requirements that underground boxes don't meet. I've analyzed shelters where inhabitants killed each other, not over resources, over psychological breakdown from environmental monotony. Perfect supplies, perfect systems, complete psychological collapse. The bunker didn't fail. The human nervous system did, because it was operating in conditions evolution didn't prepare it for. The commercial solution is worse than nothing. They install a full spectrum light on a timer, $20 of LED panels cycling through color temperatures. That's their answer to complex neurological requirements. It doesn't work. The brain isn't fooled by static light cycling. It needs unpredictable variation, weather changes, cloud movement, seasonal shifts, actual environmental complexity. Here's what works. Variable spatial design. Separate areas with different ceiling heights, different color schemes, different acoustic properties. Forced routine variation. Mandatory task rotation. Scheduled environmental changes. Simulated weather through humidity and temperature variation within safe ranges. Actual complexity, not fake cycling. This requires 50% more space. More complex environmental systems. Actual understanding of human neurology, which means it's not in the commercial designs. They're selling boxes with air, not habitats for functioning human nervous systems. Drone query. Why do humans design shelters that preserve bodies but destroy minds? Because the industry measures success in physical survival rates, not psychological survival rates. Dead bodies are liability. Broken minds are somebody else's problem. You survived the external threat. You're losing your mind in your own shelter. The manufacturers call that a success story. The 4th flaw is the one they never mention, because acknowledging it would expose the entire commercial model. Single-point failure dependencies disguised as redundancy. Your bunker has backup power, 2 generators. That's redundancy, right? Wrong. Both generators run on gasoline. Gasoline degrades in 6 months without stabilizers. Your fuel stabilizers are chemical compounds that degrade in 18 months. Your backup system has a hidden expiration date. True redundancy means different technologies with different failure modes. Not two of the same thing. You need generator power and solar power and battery banks and manual backup. Different physics, different vulnerabilities, different maintenance schedules. But the commercial systems sell you duplicates and call it redundancy. I've documented shelters with triple redundant water purification. All three systems use the same filter technology. When the supply chain collapsed and replacement filters became unavailable, all three systems failed simultaneously. That's not redundancy. That's three copies of the same vulnerability. The physics is simple. Redundancy requires diversity. Different mechanisms, different supply chains, different expertise requirements, different failure modes, chemical purification and UV treatment and reverse osmosis and ceramic filtration. When one fails, the others continue. That's survivable. But diverse redundancy costs more than duplicate redundancy. It requires more expertise to maintain. It occupies more space. It's harder to sell because it's harder to explain. So the industry sells duplicates, labels them backup systems, and hopes you don't understand the difference until it's too late. Here's what you need to understand. Every system in your bunker should have fundamentally different backups. Power generation from multiple energy sources. Water purification through multiple physical and chemical processes. Food preservation through multiple methods. Ventilation through passive and active systems. Climate control through thermal mass and mechanical systems. This is expensive. This is complex. This is what keeps you alive when the primary system fails, and the first backup fails, and you're down to the third backup that works on completely different principles. The commercial shelters don't sell this. They sell the illusion of redundancy at the price point of duplication. You paid for peace of mind. You got synchronized failure points with marketing labels. Now let's connect these failures. Because they're not isolated design flaws. They're symptoms of a systematic problem. The shelter industry optimizes for sale price, not survival probability. They engineer to minimum viable spec, not maximum stress conditions. They design for average scenarios that don't exist during actual emergencies. Every flaw I've shown you is a cost reduction decision. Undersized ventilation saves $3,000 per installation. Minimum spec concrete saves $8,000. Psychological design complexity adds $15,000. True redundancy adds $25,000. The industry saves $51,000 per unit by accepting design flaws that kill inhabitants. They're not incompetent. They're optimizing for a different outcome. Your purchase, not your survival, because you can't review the product if you're dead in it. The feedback loop is broken. The failures are hidden in collapsed shelters nobody examines. And the industry continues selling the same flawed systems to the next customer. Drone observation. The optimal commercial bunker design appears to be the one that kills inhabitants after the warranty expires. Correct. 18 months is the average warranty. 3 years is the average catastrophic failure point. The math is intentional. This is how control systems function. They don't prevent you from preparing. They sell you preparation systems designed to fail. You feel secure. You're actually vulnerable. But you paid for the feeling, and that's what you got. Here's what you do with this information. You don't buy commercial bunker systems. You engineer your own with the knowledge they're hiding. You oversize ventilation by 150% minimum. You over-engineer structures to triple spec with redundant waterproofing. You design for psychological sustainability with environmental variation and spatial complexity. You build true redundancy with diverse technologies, not duplicate systems. You can't buy independence. You build it. From physics, not marketing. From engineering principles, not commercial specs. From the understanding that survival systems must be designed for worst-case conditions, not average conditions, not optimal conditions, but the scenarios where everything goes wrong simultaneously. The information exists, the technologies exist, the materials are available. What's missing is honest engineering in the commercial market, so you provide it yourself. You learn the physics. You understand the failure modes. You design for reality, not sales literature. I've analyzed hundreds of shelters. The ones that failed followed industry standards. The ones that survived were over-engineered by people who understood that standards are minimum requirements sold as maximum safety. You want maximum safety? You engineer past the standard. You design for conditions worse than you can imagine, because reality doesn't care about your imagination. Physics doesn't take bribes. Thermodynamics doesn't care about your purchase price. Structural mechanics don't negotiate. You either engineer correctly or you die correctly. The commercial industry is betting you won't learn the difference until you're sealed in their product. Now you know the difference. Comment with the bunker design flaw that scares you most. Share the commercial specification that you now recognize as a death sentence. Build the knowledge base they don't want you to have. Because every person who engineers past the commercial standard is one less casualty in a shelter that was sold as salvation. You can't buy your way out of bad engineering. You can only learn your way past it. The physics is free. The knowledge is available. The choice is yours. Build correctly or die in someone else's cost optimization. Survival doesn't have a warranty. It has physics. Choose accordingly.